perfect world, being the child of a successful wrestler would translate into a successful career. However, as we shall see, sometimes being a second or third generation wrestler can be a curse rather than a blessing. Here are 10 failed second and third generation wrestlers and where they are now. Number 1. Ted DiBiase Jr. The $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase was one of the premier heels in the WWF, with wrestling lore stating he was considered to win the WWF Championship at Wrestlemania 4. Nonetheless, DiBiase achieved lasting success in the WWF, which is why many fans waited to see how his son Ted DiBiase Jr. would fare. While Ted Jr. got a big push as a member of Randy Orton's faction The Legacy, his career fizzled after the group broke up. The WWE tried to energize DiBiase by giving him his father's $1 Million belt, but that only reminded fans that Ted Jr. was certainly no $1 Million man. Although Ted Jr. wasn't a complete failure, his WWE tenure couldn't compete to his dad's, and he left the WWE in 2013, occasionally wrestling on the indie scene before retiring to focus on his family and business endeavors, although he did appear at a pro wrestling ego event in 2017. Ted focused on building several businesses with his entrepreneurial skills. He is the co-founder of GiveChat, part owner of collegeGarageSale.com, and co-founder of Dolphin Strategies. DiBiase also started his non-profit organization, the Ted DiBiase Foundation, which helps at-risk kids and was last reported working with underprivileged kids at a youth camp. Number 2. David Flair. Let's face it, anything short of divine intervention wasn't going to keep David Flair from reaching the same success as his father. In a sense, David Flair was the 90s version of Greg Gagne, a workman-like performer who was burdened with the albatross of a famous father's gigantic reputation. Greg Gagne had the benefit of a successful tag team with Jim Brunzell, but WCW erred by pushing David as a single star and over-pushing him. David Flair certainly deserves credit for giving it a try, but even coming close to his dad's accomplishments would be a Herculean effort. Now married and the father of 2 children, David works for his mother-in-law's company, the Seal Wire Company, which provides copper and steel wires for companies. He pops up from time to time at wrestling events, no doubt in the shadow of his more successful sister. Number 3. Brian Christopher. Brian Christopher started working in his father, Jerry the King Lawler's Memphis-based USWA promotion before heading to the WWF. Christopher's royal lineage went unacknowledged for years in both promotions, with Grandmaster Sexay working to establish his own wrestling identity. His great success was in the Team Too Cool with Scotty 2 Hotty. Unfortunately, a drug charge saw Christopher gone from the WWE and his career was never the same. He battled substance abuse problems but has reportedly been clean since 2013. 2013 also saw Christopher release his own album, Bring Sexay Back. Now he runs his own independent shows and makes motivational speeches at schools. Number 4. Shawn Stasiak. Shawn's dad, Stan Stasiak, may not have been a household name to many of today's wrestling fans, but Stan the Man Stasiak held the WWF Championship, upsetting Pedro Morales for the belt. Stan was a star during the territory days, so there was hope Shawn might go even further, much as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson surpassed his famous wrestling dad Rocky Johnson. While Shawn sought to become the first father-son duo to win the WWE Championship, he fell short, instead working as the love slave of PMS, aka Pretty Mean Sisters. Stasiak was fired allegedly for recording wrestlers' conversations backstage and showed up in WCW as the Perfect One, getting wins over former Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. Shawn won the WCW Tag Team Championship and joined the Invasion Angle in 2001, joining the alliance against the WWF. After obtaining his release in late September 2002, Stasiak has moved on to a new career, working as a chiropractor in Dallas, Texas, and a motivational speaker. Number 5. Scott Putski. Scott's famous pop Ivan Putski was a constant force in the WWF and WWF from the mid-70s through the mid-80s, entertaining fans with his power-based offense and capitalizing on his Polish heritage as Polish Power. Ivan's team with Tito Santana led to a run as WWF Tag Team Champions, and while Ivan never held any other WWF gold, he was a consistent uppercard player. His son Scott began working in 1988 and made it to the WWF for a brief run from 1993 to 1994 before returning during the Attitude Era. During this time, Scott battled Brian Christopher and teamed with Papa Putski against Christopher and Jerry the King Lawler. In a 2016 interview, Scott blamed Vince McMahon for his lack of a push. There was a lot of heat between my dad and Vince, so he was gonna, I guess, stick it to me since he couldn't stick it to my old man, which was fine. In a roundabout way, that's just who Vince is, and I wasn't stupid enough to let him do that and hang around. I mean, here's a guy, he put me in a lightweight division, and I'm 250, and Shawn Michaels was the champ at the time, and he's a $190, soaking wet. At the time, I was traveling with Joe and Mike, the Road Warriors, and we would just laugh about it. There were people just laughing about it, and they were like, "You're a light heavyweight?" I'd say, "I guess I'm whatever they tell me to be." It was Vince's way of slapping my dad in the face, because my dad was a big, strong guy. It was kind of a dig, because you know Vince is a wannabe bodybuilder. I giggle and laugh because I know the ins and outs of muscle fitness, and you'd see pictures of Vince in there. It's also comical, because that ain't him, man. Those things are so airbrushed, it's not even funny. Scott left the WWF after an injury at 1997's In Your House Ground Zero pay-per-view, working in WCW until 1999. A 2003 retirement lasted for 10 years, at which point Scott began working in NWA's Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana territory. Number 6. Sim Snuka. The son of Jimmy Superfly Snuka, James Ryer found success in the WWE's Ohio Valley Wrestling developmental territory, teaming up with Cliff Compton respectively as Deuce and Domino. Deuce and Domino captured the WWE Tag Team Championship from Brian Kendrick and Paul Lund, holding the belts for 4 months. After splitting with Domino, Deuce was rechristened Sim Snuka, capitalizing on his famous father's legacy. However, Sim floundered in the WWE despite a brief run in the Legacy faction and was released in 2009. He appeared on the independent scene afterwards and now reportedly works for an Arizona-based health supplement company's research and development division. Number 7. Richie Steamboat. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is best remembered for his show-stealing match with Randy Macho Man Savage at WrestleMania 3, but that was only one of many highlights for the former Intercontinental and NWA World Heavyweight Champion's career. Steamboat's son Richie had big shoes to fill when he decided to carry on the family tradition, and although Richie seemed to be on his way to success, an in-ring injury in NXT killed his career. Coincidentally, Richie suffered the same injury that ended his dad's career, a back injury. In a 2016 interview, Richie noted, "The back injury couldn't have happened at a worse time in my career. It was really getting to the point where things were taking off. All the hard work I had done for so many years was paying off. I was having a feud with Cassius Ohno on NXT, and I injured my back doing a moonsault. I landed wrong, and I lost all feeling in everything from my chin down. Over the next few days, feeling started to come back. I could still move everything, but I couldn't feel anything. Over the next few days, feeling started to come back to me, and I wrestled through it. I worked several more weeks and really kind of kept my mouth shut about it because I was given this position and I wanted to make the most of it. I didn't want to give up that opportunity. A wrestling future remains uncertain, but Richie hasn't ruled out a return, noting how his father returned to the ring at the age of 56 to take on Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 25, many years after his forced retirement. Number 8. David Sammartino. Much like David Flair, David Sammartino had a nearly impossible job of trying to follow up the accomplishments of his famous father, the aptly named living legend Bruno Sammartino, the longest reigning champion in WWE history. While Bruno did all he could to help his son's career, his son David lacked his father's size and charisma, and could never find success on his own. In his memoir, Bruno Sammartino discusses his distaste for the WWF, using his son to motivate him to get back into the ring, something which became evident when Bruno stopped wrestling and David became a jobber to the stars. David was fired from the WWF in 1988 after allegedly hitting a fan, but both Bruno and David believe the fan was a plant used by Vince McMahon to get back at Bruno for leaving the WWF. David's subsequent appearances in Japan, a blink and you'll miss it run in WCW, and numerous independent bookings failed to come close to his father's accomplishments. David can still be found at wrestling conventions and now works as a personal trainer. Number 9. Eric Watts. Famous or infamous depending on your point of view, wrestler and promoter Bill Watts helped his son Eric break into the national scene during Bill's run as booker for WCW. Eric got a big push out of the gate, angering many of his contemporaries who felt he was benefiting from nepotism rather than talent. However, as detailed in the book Sex, Lies and Headlocks, Watts embarrassed veteran Ravishing Rick Rude backstage after Rude boasted of his superiority over any amateur wrestler, and Watts showed him up during an impromptu amateur wrestling challenge. Eric continued with modest success in WCW until 1994, when he left the promotion, later joining his father in the WWF in 1995. Eric teamed with Chad Fortune as Techno Team 2000. A return to WCW proved no more successful than his earlier WCW run or his time in the WWF. Although Watts worked in TNA, his career fell far behind his famous father. He was last seen working as an authority figure in Great Championship Wrestling. And number 10, Afa Jr. The son of Hall of Famer Afa Anoa'i, one half of the three-time WWF Tag Team Championship team the Wild Samoans, and a member of the famous Anoa'i family, which includes such famous members as Yokozuna, Rikishi, Roman Reigns and the Usos, Afa Jr. turned out to be the black sheep of the family in terms of success. He debuted in the WWE in 2007 as Mai Tai Anoa'i, only to be suspended for 30 days for violating the WWE's wellness policy. He received a tremendous opportunity when he returned as Manu, allying himself with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton as the Legacy, but he was quickly kicked out of the group and released in February of 2009, leaving a small footprint in the WWE compared to his respective cousins. Somehow, Afa Jr. went from WWE developmental to Raw to obscurity in just a few months, failing to capture the success of his many family members. Afa Jr. returned to the independent circuit, wrestling for World Extreme Wrestling, forming a tag team with brother Samu as the Sons of Samoa, and wrestling in singles action, gaining a number of championships. Afa also toured the wrestling world in Germany, Belgium, New York, and Puerto Rico, wrestling for the World Wrestling Council. Currently, Afa Jr. remains on the wrestling scene, with appearances in Pennsylvania's Battlefield Pro Wrestling, Pennsylvania Premier Wrestling, and an NWA territory in Louisiana. Well guys, there you have it. 10 second and third generation superstars who failed to live up to their famous parents' legacy. Were there any we missed out? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.